I just want to say before I begin that there's going to be light spoilers about Lost Season 1 throughout this video. So if you're currently watching the show, it came out like 20 years ago, but if you're currently watching the show and you don't want to know what happens, feel free to scroll on. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite TV series of all time, a show that is so emblematic of the early aughts, it's crazy, and that show is Lost, which aired on ABC from 2004 all the way to 2010. Across 6 seasons, this show left us constantly confused, but endlessly enthralled in the lives of these fantastically interesting and intricate characters, and we're going to go a little bit into it right now. So the main premise of Lost is that a number of extremely photogenic people from around the world have taken a flight, Oceanic Flight 815, that is leaving from Sydney, Australia and heading into Los Angeles. But sadly, the flight crashes. Like majorly crashes, and a lot of the people pass away. But there are a group of survivors. And amidst the wreckage and chaos of a plane crash, these people not only have to address the immediate injuries that have befallen many of the people in this plane, but they also have to find water, food, shelter, mysterious noises are booming from the jungle, and ideally they want to find a way to get home. Pretty early on in season 1, we have a cast of main characters who are the survivors that we follow. There's Jin and his wife Sun. They're from Seoul, South Korea, and they're married, but you can tell that their marriage is on the rocks. Sun comes from a really wealthy and powerful, influential family in South Korea, and Jin has spent much of his life hiding the fact that he's a fisherman's son and isn't used to the life of power, glitz, and glamour that Sun is. Next, we have Sawyer, who is a con man who has spent a lot of his life carrying around a letter addressed to a Sawyer, from which he got his name, who has committed evil acts against his family and who he seeks revenge. We have Michael and his son Walt, who we learn are just recently reunited after estrangement for much of Walt's childhood. We have Hurley, a former lottery winner who is convinced that he is plagued by bad luck ever since he played a set of numbers and won over $100 million in the lottery. We have Kate, another ex-con who is on the run, and who on that flight that crashed was actually being taken by a marshal for her sentencing. We have Charlie, I love this photo is so funny, who is kind of this formerly famous, kind of washed up rock star who is struggling with addiction. We have Saeed, a former military officer from Iraq, who is struggling with the complicated past of the things that he has done to innocent people. We have Bernard and Rose, two of my favorite characters on the show, who are navigating Rose's health concerns and wondering if the island might just be the answer that they've been looking for. We have Boone and Shannon, who are Lannister-like siblings, step-siblings, I should say, who come from a rich and powerful family. And let's see, did I get everyone? We also have John Locke, who has spent much of his life kind of toiling away at a box company, who is trying to get over a major betrayal that completely altered his health and his life, and who is shocked when he lands on the island after crash landing that he is able to stand for the first time in years. Previous to the crash, he had been in a wheelchair. And of course, you can't forget Jack Shepherd, who is a spinal surgeon, very lucky for this group of people that they crashed on a deserted island, deserted, quote, quote, and that they just happened to have a doctor with them. But he is a spinal surgeon who suddenly starts seeing strange visions of a person that he presumed to be deceased. Now, the gang quickly realizes that they're going to have to rely on each other in ways they have rarely relied on other human beings before, because all is not as it seems on this beautiful island, which, if you're wondering, was filmed in real life in Oahu, Hawaii. There's also this awesome person, a Game of Thrones fan, who made this really detailed map of the island, if anyone's curious. Now, in season 1 of the show, the narrative begins a format in which, as events are moving linearly forward on the island, we're getting flashbacks to everything that happened leading up to the crash in each of the characters' lives. Throughout season 1, almost all of the characters get their own flashback episode. You know what? As I'm looking at this right now, I realize that I totally forgot Claire. Claire is also on this island. She's right there in the top right next to Saeed. So anyways, they each get their own flashback episodes, which give us little hints and clues as to some of the things I've told you of why they were on that plane in the first place, why they were headed from Sydney to Los Angeles, but also some of the sort of paranormal, mysterious things that happened in their lives before they arrived here on our screens. Now, in the first/early second season, the main mysteries that the show is dealing with is one, this monster that lives on the island that will sometimes attack their camp, that makes strange, ominous noises, that leaves things unalived. Also, a distress signal coming from a previous person who's crashed on the island, who's been there for over 16 years, Rousseau. And the discovery of a hatch in the jungle, which leads to what they imagine is some sort of underground bunker. But they don't understand, why is there a hatch here? Are there people on this island who built this hatch? Do those people still live here? Are they watching us? Is that why we hear weird whispers in the forest? And much of the first series sees our cast of characters addressing these mysteries, trying to figure out what's going on, while relationships also start to heat up with some of our ensemble cast members. Jack, who we just saw a second ago, and Kate start to have a flirtation that develops, as well as Sawyer and Kate, who have this sort of antagonistic, charged relationship that they're kind of cut from the same cloth. They're both ex-cons. They both are used to being manipulative and duplicitous. There's kind of this question that hangs in the air, like, is Kate going to choose the good guy or the bad boy? Also, one of the big things that season 1 uses as a sort of narrative device is the secret that Sun can speak English, which her husband does not know. That is a huge reveal. Now, towards the end of season 1, we start experiencing more moments where it's clear that something paranormal is going on the island. Apart from the obvious paranormal example of the smoke monster, it appears like John Locke was sort of almost chosen to be here. One, the fact that he can suddenly walk again after being in a wheelchair for many years, but also that he feels called and guided to go into this hatch. Now, interestingly enough, the hatch has written on it a series of numbers, which are the same set of numbers that Hurley used to win the lottery, a set of numbers that a fellow member in a mental institution that he was staying in was repeating to himself over and over again, numbers that Hurley has come to think of as cursed numbers. Just another of the many ways that the lives of everyone on this island are interlinked, but also that strange coincidences from their lives prior to crashing are happening here on the island. Now, one of the interesting things about Lost is that many characters on the show have the name of real-life philosophers who lived at some point in history. For example, John Locke, the character, is named after the philosopher John Locke. You can see here that he was an Enlightenment philosopher who dealt with the relationship between nature and civilization. Now, this helps to explain why John is the way he is. One, with the idea of tabula rasa, that John's past doesn't have to define him, and that he has a clean slate as he starts again here on the island, able to walk, and very different from the paper-pushing life that he led when he worked at a box company prior to landing on the island. But also his kind of obsession with wildlife, nature, hunting, and forming an egalitarian society on the island. Now, we also see that naming convention with one of season 1's characters, Rousseau, who is named after the philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And Jean-Jacques Rousseau promoted this idea of the noble savage, essentially that man in their natural and wild state is born innocent and pure until society corrupts. And Rousseau is very skeptical of the outside world, especially after what's happened to her when she landed on the island. And she's lived all alone for many years in the wilderness. And she could be like a noble savage figure, someone who has an intense desire for self-preservation and who fears the corruption of others, the corrupting influence, I should say. So this has been a little overview of season 1. I could go into much more detail as there's so much to unpack in season 1 and the seasons after. There's so much that I would love to talk about with you with, so I think I'll probably make more videos on this topic. But yeah, if you have any questions or there's any specific things you want me to address about Lost, let me know and I'll try my best.